That's what happens when you start again. On Tuesday, on Tuesday during Horror Autopsy, we explored the idea that modern horror villains are over-designed, layered with prosthetics, too much visual noise, and spectacle. Now, tonight, we test the opposite idea on Villain Lab. What happens when you design with restraint rather than excess? All right, I think I should probably say this before we go forward. Tonight, I'm going to do a little bit more overview or review of our previous episode on Horror Autopsy because I got to be honest, the feed was really bad. So I'm going to do the courtesy of just covering a little bit more than I probably will in future episodes, but I think it's kind of important. So one of the big things that we were trying to cover and what we covered was the idea that villains are proportionally over-designed and that it starts to kind of erode the resonance and emotional connectivity that you have when you watch villains in horror films, specifically horror films, but I guess we can go with villains in general. So I brought some examples to the table in our previous episode, and I'm going to kind of cover some of those right away, just so that we kind of get back on track, if that makes sense. So bear with me for 1 second, and I'm going to throw this up, and we'll get on top of it. Gotta love tech. All right, there we go. So these are some of the examples I was focusing attention on, and some of the contrasts that I personally found sort of difficult. I pointed to Pennywise right away. I want to cover this again. I said it before. I really, really love these characters, and I wanted them to resonate deeply, but I found a little bit too exaggerated. It was like it was trying too hard. That was what the conclusion was, that a large amount of this kind of concludes to being trying way too hard to do something that you don't have to really try that hard to do. So Pennywise was a good example. The over-exaggeration of the face, and for an actor who can do such amazing things with his face, I thought this was just a bit too much. Another example was this kind of telegraphed look. I mean, I'm not taking shots at Jared Leto. I'm taking shots at the decisions that were made to create this character. I find this is probably very true of most people. I don't find this frightening. And more to the point, I don't have to dig very deep to figure out if this guy is the person in the scenario that isn't right. So there's not much I have to really kind of try to do here. The big one that we really focused on in the last episode was long legs. I personally found this to almost detract from the fear base that I was starting to get immersed in with the film's structure and the way they set it up. Nicolas Cage is ridiculous on a good day, so like giving him this vehicle of just being even more unhinged just eventually kind of detracted from everything. There's nothing scary about this. I felt bad. At certain points, I felt like I wasn't supposed to be watching what I was watching, and it just made me feel uncomfortable, not in a scared way, but in just a awkward, I don't know if I should be watching this kind of way. So I think that came from the character design, because let's be honest, he's a character that's been designed, and I think there's a lot of flaws here. There's just this attempt, I think, to make us uncomfortable with his face, because I don't know if this was the thought, but in my mind, it felt like plastic surgery gone entirely wrong. So there's a lot of discomfort in that. And listen, I'll be honest, I don't remember the film. It didn't really stick with me. So if that was a part of the character, I'm sorry, I don't remember. But this just kind of tore me out of the moments that he was in. That and just the exaggerations. I put an extra little piece on this one because I wanted to contrast what I think is a good example of making something more resonant because it feels more grounded. And it's Tim Curry's Pennywise. Yeah, it's an easy comparison to make, but I think it's one that also bears a lot of fruit in the conversation that we're having. In this case, Pennywise feels like, I made this comparative the other night. I feel like this Pennywise could come to my door and knock on it. Whereas I feel like the Skarsgård Pennywise, sorry, pinching and grabbing, is constructed in the narrative, and that's where it's held. So it's a character in the film. It's not playing on the things that I think really, really resonate with people, and that's that idea of this could be real, like this could happen. So this Pennywise is just, and I'm old enough to say this. I love Tim Curry. I love his work and his face. Like Skarsgård and him have a lot of commonalities. The work in the face through both of their its or Pennywises. They both do such amazing face work, amazing voice work, amazing body and physicality. But again, there's just this really disturbing reality that's sort of held here that isn't held in the modern day It. All right, so that's a sort of example of the two contrasts that we're talking about. Is this sort of more, I know it kind of seems crazy saying this is subtle when you've got a clown with a red nose and a rainbow sort of jumper on, but that's what a clown looks like, right? Like that's what clowns look like. So it's basing its fear and the fear it's trying to evoke, I think, in us, in that it is the approachable clown that has an inconsistency to it. The look in the eye is wrong. The expression is slightly off kilter. The smile isn't the way it's supposed to. It's forced. These kind of little idiosyncrasies make this character in their benign, innocuous kind of start point become something that starts to make you feel incredibly uncomfortable, and then just take it the step further and then have the acting and the physicality of the actor making you feel claustrophobic. And then you can get into all of the scene structure and all that fun stuff. But the reality is that this to me resonates, right? And to be fair, this is also a really good example. Both these films are great examples of things that had no problem with being in the daytime. So both Pennywises have scenes in the daytime, in the sun, where typically horror films don't really tread very often. So too does Longlegs, to be fair. The Little Things, not so much, but again, it's more of a serial killer cop sort of structure, a la Seven without the gore. But it's a fair, I think, comparison to Longlegs in that sense, right? The same sort of psychological structure that you look for in a thriller and a cop movie and a question, sort of whodunit sort of thing. But they tackle the question in the same ways in the Longlegs and the Little Things. But our two Pennywises are the perfect contrast for this discussion. This being the focal point sort of what I've been saying from the previous episode. And then what we're going to kind of look at is deriving this idea, but possibly just playing a little bit more mental trickery, if that makes sense. So if we all agree, at least for this purpose, that this is scary, and it is scary, but that it's not scary in a way that sticks with you, right? That's my assertion. That this resonates so much deeper because there's an actual tactile or emotional connection that I can connect myself. Like I can say I've seen clowns and they look like this, and this guy don't look like a good clown. Does that sort of track for everybody? Whereas this, yeah, I'm not saying I want to get caught in a room with this guy. There's nothing comfortable about Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. But like I said, it's contained within that film, and that's where it remains. I'm hoping I'm articulating this correctly. I think we'll get into it as we kind of jump into sort of design. So since I want to kind of move away from this, and I think for our purposes, I think this is even too far, because again, it's not, yeah, it's creepy clown, and that's the sort of baseline, so we're good with that. But let's be honest, like this is almost too easy too. So let's condense the idea and let's think of something that really would kind of make most people, if not all people, super uncomfortable. And the first inclination that I had looking at these examples of sort of over-exaggerated forms was taking it down to its base form and saying, okay, what if we remove stuff, right? Tweak it ever so slightly, make the symmetry of the face too symmetrical, make the eyes slightly off their, their start points in a place, in the position that's just slightly off. Will those little micro tweaks tweak your brain into seeing something that's not safe because it doesn't work in your brain? I kind of think about horror films that have like shape-shifting characters that just don't fit right. There's something slightly off. Some of the films, like The Thing, it almost takes multiple watches to catch it. And then there's others where like the skin just doesn't fit right. The way they move just doesn't work right. I mean, the exaggerated example would be like Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black, right? Like that whole like almost like cartoonish version of like the skin not fitting and the awkward movements, like faux human, trying to be human. I'd like to say Megan tried that, but I don't think that's fair to say in any way. I digress. So if we're going to design a character that isn't these kind of almost prototypical villains from films, what do we do? So I kind of started thinking about stuff that I thought really resonates deeply and like that removal of features. So I went and kind of made an inspiration wall. As an artist, I like to do this. Although I don't take the step of putting it on a cool background and then arranging it in some sort of way. I just open up a ton of browsers on my, ton of browser windows and just start searching different stuff. But as I was searching through different searches, and I went through, creepy faces, right down to creepy doll faces, it was kind of where I started to see where I felt would really be a cool direction. And that was, again, not the cherubic doll face, although that's creepy in and of itself, but it was the absence of features that stood out in my mind. And I was like, oh yeah, like no eyes. That's disquieting, right? I looked even at like this kind of idea of like the smoothed out face. For me, one of my greatest inspirations as an artist to make that made me feel uncomfortable and that I love is the drummer for Tool, Danny Carey, who does all of their art. And he did like the video for Sober, and Sober in and of itself is a really disquieting, it's one of my favorite words, disquieting experience. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. You can definitely find it on YouTube, so do that. But watch it for the music and watch it how it sort of tells that story. But at the same time as well, like watch it for what it is too. It's disturbing and it makes you feel uncomfortable. And there's this featurelessness to the central character. So this was where I went in my mind, is going, okay, how can we make this horror character with less exaggeration? I'm going to show you a couple of my pieces that I go like, I'm great with exaggeration. So I'm guilty of that sort of predisposition, but let's try to figure out how we can do it without doing that. So this was my inspiration wall for this. The guy over here in the sort of misty shower thing was, I had this idea of going like, how do you kind of do this? How do you blur a face, but without the extra benefit of some sort of thing that's in front of it, whether it be a piece of glass or something that's covering it, so that you get that kind of buffer effect or that opacity, right? How do you do that but self-contain it, in the face itself without it looking like a blur effect. So that was another idea. I kind of went like, can we do that? So like if you were standing at a distance and you saw this person or this character, it would just look like a person. And as you kind of hit this midpoint, it's that moment where you notice like, no, this isn't right. Like there's something wrong here. I don't like this. I like that sort of zone, the holy shit zone, if that makes sense. Listen, it's kind of like my eyesight problem. I can't see really far, and I have a real problem seeing really close. But there's this like perfect zone in between them that I can see golden. Without glasses, no problem, right? So I think that's the zone I want to try to hit with this piece of art so that we can play this game, right? One of tonight's rules, I think the only rule for tonight is going to be no distortion. So no blurring effects or anything like that. Anything that we're going to do that's going to kind of make this thing creepy, we're going to have to figure out to do without the effect of a blur or some sort of distortion, right? Because again, I think that's an over push, especially if we're trying to be restrained, right? Make sense? We good? Okay. All right. So, I don't know if this is something that people kind of get into, but I'll show you my canvas and my dimensions for my canvas if you'd like, in the event that anybody's interested. I've only really started using Procreate, probably over the last, year and a half. And in my previous, job focus, I was a chef, so I didn't really have a lot of time to delve into art. But in recent history, I've been, getting more and more involved with playing with the digital platform, and I really enjoy it. Never thought I would, though. So I have two canvases I really like. I don't know why. I go just really big pixels, and one's a rectangle and one's a square. So one's 3,000 by 3,000 pixels, and one's 3,000 by 4,000. So we're going to use the 3,000 by 4,000 because I think we're going to end up doing this kind of letterbox form, because I'm thinking longer in terms of character design personally. Again, I think it bears talking about silhouettes, right? I think silhouettes are super important when you're dealing with horror, and specifically with horror characters. Great silhouettes. Jason Voorhees, obviously Michael Myers being probably the most iconic silhouette that I can think of in horror history. Freddy's got a good one. So I think you always want to be wary of how that looks. So in this case, I think we have to kind of think about who we're jumping on the page here. So one of the things I thought about was growing up in the 80s, we were always told that serial killers looked like everybody else, and that's what made them super frightening. So I think we're looking like our subject tonight is going to be definitely someone who, hold on, my watch might beep beep beep. We're gonna go for something very, very straightforward. We're gonna go for a male. We're gonna make them white and between the ages of 40 and 50. Yeah. For those who know, they know, and for those who don't, they don't. So that's what we're gonna do for a subject. For like clothing, I would just like to think again. We want to make this character kind of almost innocuous. So just, I'm going to go casual. And what would be normal for this age group, right? I'm not thinking a cardigan and slippers, but I'm also not thinking he's, rocking a suit and a briefcase because we want to make him some sort of capitalist icon. Let's just think, jeans and a t-shirt, or jeans and a collared shirt, whatever works for us. I don't think setting matters at this point. We're just doing the character itself. And I think the silhouette, which by the way I'm not going to try to spell because I am an atrocious speller, so I'm just going to go I'm going to go like that, sill, because it just makes more sense because it's people seeing this anyway. And I think we want to go long and narrow. And part of, I think, what we want to do with the body is attempt to play a bit of trickery of the eye and make the limbs exaggerated, but only slightly. So it's just like slight exaggerations. Exaggerations is also another word that I imagine I'm going to misspell, but why not? And when I say slight, I mean, again, we're trying to hit that perfect zone, that zone be like where it starts to kind of come into picture. And that's when you start to acknowledge that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. Nope. Got to go. I think that's, let's call it the fight or flight zone, like that moment where it's like, I got to get out of here. So it's just these like little things that stand out. So little changes. And yeah, we're gonna try to realize a completed character, at least as close as we can. But don't worry, I will finish it and I will showcase it regardless, for all of us to see. Okay, so what else do we have to cover in terms of our character? I think that's pretty good to start. So now let's just kind of tinker and play. So for me, in terms of a process, I will kind of just quickly try to map it out. And I can do this, like I can do this either on a sketch pad or here on the tablet. I've been more known, or I've kind of been in the habit that I usually do this on a sketch pad because I find it easier to sketch on a sketch pad. Even though when I'm doing finished work, I find the tablet much easier, right? But then again, this is sketching, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. So all right, so this is kind of the base idea of like, okay, this is a dude, he's standing there and he's chilling, right? So we've got our dude, but that's just kind of like a dude. There's nothing different about our friend here. So I think what you want to start looking at is like, okay, so we've got areas that we can play with. We've got the arms, right? We've got legs. We got torso. Torso, I think, is underrepresented in the whole like slight exaggerations or slight off centers. I think if we're looking at posture or pose, we could probably do a little bit more with that. I kind of like the tilted body frame kind of look. At minimum, let's kind of try to figure out or look at doing something like at least a piece that covers off this area, right? So it's like a bust shot. But if we feel like this whole space like really needs the help, let's do that as well. All right, let's mess about a little bit more with some more sketching, just to kind of get a little bit better at our idea here. Okay. So I jostle between two kinds of sketching, right? I get into like sketching where it starts to really work and I like it. So then I just jump right into it and start going. And then there's sketching where it's like, no, it's just a sketch. I would like this to be better, but it's not. And it almost derails the whole thing. Don't worry, we're not there. We're just fine. All right, so I kind of think we're going to go still for the straightforward look. And we'll like do a head tilt or something like that, just so there's that kind of... You gotta have the classics in there, right? I mean... That's got to be part of it. The head tilt's classic horror. I'm okay with I'm okay with classic horror. I don't have any problems with that. Clearly I don't have any problems with that. Nostalgic bombing this entire thing. But I think there's reasons. And again, like that's been the crux to the argument is that if we over design, we're kind of doing the work. And I think that's the problem, is that we're doing the work for the audience now. And that almost defeats the purpose of, at least in my opinion, it kind of defeats the purpose of, experiencing horror in any way, shape, or form. Don't get me wrong, I like movies that challenge me, and I also like to be fed. Like, just, give me a Saw movie. It's easy. I don't have to think through it. But if you're asking me about horror that, I'm not going to say matters, but that I can tell you right now I remember and that I care about, yeah, it's probably not going to be something that was made in the 2000s. At least not from that horror sort of a resonance position. All right. I know we're putting the t-shirt sort of look on them right now, but that's not it. Don't worry. So already we're like a little like longer than we need to be, which I think is kind of where we're going. Remember, guys, it's a sketch. It's not a finished piece. So you don't have to finish the piece. I think one of the things about sketching that I enjoy is you get to kind of work through the problem. So you get to look at it, you get to kind of take it apart and play with it, and you're not committing to it necessarily. You're just trying to create the idea in a more physical form. And then that kind of tactile nature and connection starts to allow it to manifest. I like the idea, as well as like just having, again, a narrow stance that's just even slightly off, almost like a ballerina stance, just so it looks kind of awkward. Yeah, we just haven't given him legs that are long enough. So it'd be a very short individual. And I don't necessarily think we're going for... I think there's something to be said for like small, scary. Don't get me wrong. But in this case, I don't think it works for what we're talking about. I don't think we want to do like Leprechaun or Chucky. You know what I mean? I also think I want to kind of extend the torso slightly. So I'm going to kind of give this that center here. Part of me wants to kind of tilt it outward so that it even looks like there's this weird sort of twist point that's not like natural. Does that make sense? So that like there's one leg that is ahead of another. Good thing we're doing a bust, right? All right. All right, that's terrible, but it works. It's terrible, but it works. And why do I say that? Because part of it's, I think, as well, just warming up your hand, warming up the brain and going, okay, these are the things I'm trying to accomplish here. So how do I make that work? We might take the framework that we've got here with Chico and just run with it. So let's play some digital games. So things you can do. I'm just going to duplicate the layer, and then I'm going to kill off one of them, and I'm going to erase this access here. Right. So that I'm just left with the framework I like. Because, yeah, I'm not 100% taken with it, but it does the work, and I think we're good where we are. So I think we can start playing with this guy. But if we ever wanted to make sure that we wanted to refer to our notes, we always have that layer there. So we'll keep that bad boy there as a working layer, and then we'll play with this guy. And yeah, there's probably some fodder in my erasing that's not been dealt with, but that's okay. That's okay. All right, let's look at him. Okay, I mean, we could shrink him down and get him full body here. and then we can start playing. All right. And I kind of talked about some of the things I've done or I do when I draw. A large amount of it is just kind of me sketching and then again falling in love with the sketch. But in this case, we're gonna, try to look like we know what we're doing. So I'm gonna drop the opacity down to, a decent number. This is a personal call for everybody involved. You want to put it to a certain opacity. This is just a guideline for me. So I don't want it to, be predominant, and I don't want to get too stuck on it, but it's got all the pieces that I need. So we're good to go. Oh yeah. And as I've said many times, don't forget your layers and don't forget to check the tools you're using. So Wrap Me Out, I'm using the same pen I use all the time, which is the name is not on the screen currently. It is the Leffy. So that's the one I like to use for my inking and pretty much is my utility tool for most of this. Okay, so obviously we can pinch and go bigger and smaller. We're going to go nice and big here and we'll start working. So absence of features is what we're trying to sort of play on, right? So let's start giving us a little bit of form here. I kind of want to look at sort of starting to map out the face with just the basic line sort of ideas and then allowing it to kind of grow from there. But I almost want that neutral, that neutral face. It's great. I've got the other screen I can kind of look at and check out my work as I go. Let's just set eyes. Let's set normalcy to start, right? That way we've got just, okay, here's our baseline, and then we're going to mess around with it a bit. We're going to do that neutral expression sort of look too. So it's just going to be clean. And I think what we want to do is symmetry is not normal. So one of the things we're going to try to do is we're going to try to be as symmetrical as we can. So we could use a tool in here to do it. I don't know if I want to do it. Maybe we'll try it, but we'll sort of freehand it for now. And then if it's not where we want to go, we won't go. All right. I also think facial feature details are something that we would probably want to almost omit to a degree. So it could still have the face form, but when you get closer to it, it's just lacking that sort of expression that faces get over years, right? Which wrinkles and such that actually make for, a face of character. So let's kind of do that. If we're going to do it, something to that effect. And don't worry, we'll give our character hair. We won't make them bald. And I don't want it to be cartoony, but I think when we're starting this out, it's going to kind of have cartoony sort of structures to it. So I want that to be a bit of a smoother line. Again, I think part of what we're doing that is foreign to human structure is smooth, right? Nothing's really smooth. And when you start looking at typical approaches to horror characters, there is a lot more franticness in their design. You get more jagged lines, you get more ability to kind of get that aging look because it sort of magnifies the sort of expressions and that creates that kind of creepiness, right? But in this case, like I said, we want to make it uncomfortable and then extremely frightening. All right, so our nose position is really weird and our eye position is really weird. Normally, I would say we should change that, but in this case, I think we should probably keep it. Although we're probably going to make the eyes a lot bigger. So we talked about layering before. I use it as a protectionary step as much as I do as a technical requirement.
insofar as if I don't want to keep something, I don't have to. I can just get rid of the layer. So it gives me some room for some experimentation, right? I'm just going to try to map out a little bit more of an eye socket for this guy right now, so that there's a little bit more definition to play with. And we'll just, I don't want that. We're going to kind of delineate the face with that symmetry concept. If it doesn't look right, if it doesn't look the way we want it to look, then we'll play with the symmetry tool. How's that? Yeah. I think the mouth is probably going to give me the most hassle, just because we're looking for neutrality, and I don't want it to look like a cartoon. But there's going to be a kind of draw to do that, so we might play with a couple of the tools in the tool chest. We can also do this as well, right? So I can kind of look at that and play that game. Since we're going for neutral expression, I think we should also kind of be considering neutral, like, face lines, like we talked about, smooth, almost expressionless, but expressive because of the lack of expression. There we go. And we're probably going to end up doing like some feature layers so that we can kind of expand and play with the dimensions on it in ways I probably wouldn't necessarily when I'm doing this normally. So we'll probably have a few more layers. Yeah, we're gonna box out the eyebrows. We'll give them detail, don't worry. Just kind of setting up our guide to just play with. All right, so far so good. I mean, I most think the ears are too big and almost clownish, but we can still have them. Because what we're going to do now is we're just going to make an outline, and then we'll attack each area of the face and start to give it a little bit more more definition and more sort of understanding of where we're going with the concept. This just kind of becomes a nice guideline for us to know where we're going. So let's kind of pull this here and pull this here. All right, no, that looks weird. Maybe we'll just box out his head like this. I'm okay with that. I'm not upset with that at all. I'm not a fan of the nose, I won't lie. I think it's the one part that's bugging me. So let's see if we can repair it. Like that a little bit more. I think that's a bit better. Yeah, that's a bit better, right? I think we're gonna end up messing around with his eyes, so don't think this is the end of that. But I kind of like that idea. Now, some of the things we can do here that I kind of enjoy about this, I've talked about some of these tools. The warp or distort tools really kind of fun. If you think that perhaps the lines are just not where you want them to be and you want to tighten them or shift them, pull them around, right? You can do this type of stuff, right? Which is, it's rather liberating. Like if we wanted this to be more of that straight, almost pillbox, that pill-like face. And then we wanted to kind of pull this in so it was just a little tighter, tighten up the face, make it a little bit more round, right? We can do that. Again, we have some, ability to kind of go backwards, right? So we are able to repair. And worst case Ontario, all you got to do is pop another layer and, duplicate it. So duplicate the layer. protect the underlayer and then go back at this with your tool and then play around with it and see what you like to do. In this case, again, we're looking for symmetry. We didn't use the symmetry tool. There is a way to use the iPad with the symmetry tool, and you literally just have to design one side, which, yes, probably much easier for us to play with at this point. But I think this is a little bit more fun because you get to play with the concept and you play with, workarounds. In terms of the face that we've drawn here, I kind of like tightening it a bit. I feel like that's a better answer. I also think the face is way too long for like the inside of its face, like the face itself. The head is too big. So we're going to have to play with that proportion, but that also could be part of, right? That said, I think that we also have to bear in mind that we don't want it to be a cartoon, right? So we're going to want to remember that as we go, that we don't want it to be cartoonish. So the proportions should be out of whack and disquieting, but they shouldn't be like, haha, funny, clownish. Do I make you laugh? We ended up pulling this detail because it was from, obviously this is what happens when you have multiple layers, right? Some of the layers we built are ones that connect and some of them don't. So I'm kind of liking this a little bit more. I still want to pull the nostril line a bit more. So I kind of want to just elongate the nostrils just a bit. Just so it's got more of that note, like just a wider nose. I don't think the nose is wide enough. And yeah, to that end, yeah, the eye placement's really odd. The eye placement is really, really odd. Which, yeah, I think it's odder than it should be. How's that? Let's start it just kind of more naturally. And then we can, goof with it a bit. This is also the danger of playing with this tool, because if you're not designing each element separately, like if you're not just doing the mouth is its own layer and the eyes are its own layer and the head is its own layer, it starts to get a little janky. Okay, so let's kind of do this. So we're gonna kill off the bulbous face because I think this is the face we like, and then we're just gonna merge these two layers. Or sorry, yeah, I want to merge them, not combine them. So you combine them, you can make almost like a bundle or a folder of a layer, different layers that comprise one element. In this case, I'm just going to combine the two faces because I think we're done with messing with them. Now we're just going to erase where we have to erase. So we merge them together. So now they're just one piece. See, hello, bye-bye. And I know we haven't looked at the body or its relationship, and right now I don't think we really have to worry about that. Now it's just a matter of figuring out what we're going to do. So let's drop another layer onto this, and again mess with this just to make it back to being more of a guide. All right, we're going to stick with the pen we've got, but I'm going to make the point a little bit finer because I don't want it to be that sort of poppy big. So now it's a question of going, since we're on a fresh layer, we can now make sort of design decisions to help our symmetry problem. So if I were to draw an eye, for this character, I would probably go that route. But as you can tell, I feel like it's kind of too high in our sort of proposed eye socket. So we can, again, just uniform pull it around and shift it. Like, I like that as a good position for an eye. But then the question becomes, we talked about making forms that were just not common or absent. So do we want to warp or distort this eye ever so slightly so it doesn't make sense. So it's pulled in an awkward way. Do you see what I mean? Can we do that without it just being too weird? You know? Right? And then we can, do this trick. It's not a trick, it's just a thing. Right? And then do that by uniform. And then we can flip it horizontally and we can pull it across. And then now that I'm on stream, I get this extra little bonus of having this screen here I can play with. And then we can sort of line everything up and make it that symmetrical look. Right? So now we can start to sort of build off that base and just be a little bit more specific with what we're doing. I can also combine these ones, which I will do, so that we have the eyes on one socket. So we are going to start building out each piece just because I think we might want to play with manipulating them. And that way we have them all separated. There's also going to be layers I'm going to start that I'll probably merge as we go, which you've noticed already. All right, so now I'm not going to go too detailed. I have a style that I like to do, and it lends itself well to the sort of the exaggerated form that kind of I'm not promoting in this right now. So and then I gotta stop myself there because I really want to work on this symmetrical eye socket thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make these details on this eye and then position them in the same spot on the opposite side, right? So it's the same thing twice, and that symmetry should be somewhat off-putting, one would hope. Yeah, obviously we're not going to go that far out. Okay, so let's see how that works. Now, I advocate a lot for testing, so be able and be willing to test. Right, we got the uniform on, flip that horizontally, and then try to link the two. That feels right. All right. So we're already starting to see how that can be a little bit uncomfortable. So if I feel like we've got more detail that we need, we can, again, since we're not going to merge these two layers, what we're going to do is we're just going to kill that off for now. And we're going to look and see if there's more that we want to do. And this is where I think the layering can get a little bit messy. So there's going to be moments where you're going to want to kind of just do that, just so that there's less noise, so you can see truly what you're leaving on the page. In this case, we're talking about the absence of features. So I'm right away going to lean into, let's get the eyes out of there. So let's stick with this absence of eye. It just becomes a question of if we want it to be an empty socket or if we want it to be like that black void-like space. So for now, it's just a matter of looking at it from a detail perspective. I think we're further ahead getting these kind of micro details that, we can kind of slide in, but push hard on the symmetry and use shading to fill in the blanks. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to use the right-hand side of the face as our building space. And then the left-hand side of the face will just be the symmetry to that. We already have our eyes, and I kind of like that. So we can pop our original image back on, and we can start looking at other parts. So I kind of want to go nose down. Like I want to go this way. I don't like that at all, but I think you get the point. So This is where we're going to go a little bit layer heavy, a little bit layer happy, but I think in the end it'll help us. That neutral expression, I really, really want a straight line, but I don't know if that's going to work. That feels like it's pulling to the center too much. You can do this all day if you feel better about making your line with your hand in a specific position. I do. I kind of like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. I think what we'll do too is we'll add like a detail line here that just finishes off, and then yeah, that'll give us a wider base, which was something I really wanted. Let's go. Yeah, I think this should be the inside of the nose, so I think we should go more like this. Yeah, that kind of looks weird. Yeah, that looks really weird and awkward. Let's keep it. I don't know why, but I think we'll keep it. See how that looks in a second. And over we go. Okay, so we gotta pull this way over. Oh, that's not good. Okay, there we go. I think that's about where it is. There we go. Yeah, I think that's going to be a nice, weird, kind of awkward feature, like where the nostril is positioned weirdly. We might play with like some of the detail around the nostril when we get closer, but for now, I think that's a really cool look. Now, if you really want to be super organized, which is never a bad idea, you can start making your groups of the parts that you're not willing to commit to connecting, if that makes sense. Because at some point in time, we may want to end up with these images connected like this. But for the time being, I'm leaving them disconnected in certain points because I'm still wondering if I want to keep this symmetry thing going. So far, I think it's working out. So we'll go and we're just going to keep adding more details layered on top of each other. We can move these layers around as we go. It's no big deal. See, part of me just wants the eye, but like everything to look too staged. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. So we'll go, let's try this. I think it's weird enough that if both eyebrows looked the same and they were in the same spot, you know what I mean? Again, no one has the same eyebrows on both sides of their head. It's just, that would be weird. All right, let's do our thing. Okay. And we'll do the flippy flip. Okay. There we go. So that's... Why do I feel like that's... It's like trying to land a plane, guys. It's really not. It's really not. I feel like that might be it. What's everybody think about that? Anybody here thinking this makes sense? No. No, I think it's in the wrong spot. Like, that's the right connection, like the right points. It's not lining up right, is it? I guess we could do this. Yeah, that would make more sense. So let's try this. We'll go like that. And then we'll just... So it centers out there. Okay, that might be a better answer for us. So that's where it is. And that's where it lines up. So that should be correct. Because we also have to remember, right? Like, my undersketch is not exactly correct. Do you know what I mean? It's not like the undersketch is perfectly in line. And that's what we're using as the sort of center line. That ain't centered. You know what I mean? So we got to keep that in mind as well. So, you know, keep room for error and then just sort of adjust around it. All right. I've been digging this whole one side thing. All right. I think this is going to be the most challenging part. Like I said, it's going to be the mouth. And we're still playing the only, you know, designing the right-hand side. So let's see if we can make that work. I don't know. Mouths are one of those things that I like to start in the middle so that there's like that center point and then you kind of work around it. So I'm trying to, like, in my mind, look for that sort of prototypical spot. Now you stare at it for a second, you try to figure it out. Okay, that would be like where the top lip is, but I feel like that's not the right answer. I feel like this should be where the top lip goes. And this should be the under of the top lip. Kind of like that. With a little bit of detail work there. And then I think you want to kind of go like that. And then maybe, because this is going to be like that like bottom lip connected point. You know what I mean? The fleshy bit that gives it the 3D feel. Oh wow, that's just not right. Okay. Then we're gonna see. That's what I mean. That's gonna look awkward. So do we just go? Let's go like this. Let's just do a thicker line. Oh, that's gonna be so weird. I don't know if it's gonna work. Let's just do it and just see what happens, because it's gonna look so weird. I think it's worth checking out just because it's gonna be awkward. All right, let's give her. Okay. It's gonna be so weird. Oh, it's weird. I like it. I like it so much. It's so weird. I think this is exactly all right. So we're hitting what we want to hit, right? We want that exaggerated feature look, right? I'm thinking this is going to look somewhat normal from here. But like, as you get to this point, it's going to be just horrifically awkward and scary. All right, let's get back into it. So there we go. We've got our guides. Okay, so we've got the mouth, which is just so weird. And I don't, you know what, to be honest with you guys, I don't think we want to change the form of the face, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think we change the outline of the face. I think we stick with where we are with it, because I think it's going to lend itself even better to this slightly off sort of look that we're creating here. So let's do that. I think there's going to be also some moments where we're going to have to figure out like just some bridge points. So I was kind of thinking what we would do is, since you can see all of what I'm doing, it's just not very huge, is what I'm thinking is any points that we need to connect by something, we're just going to throw it in the layer. So like for instance here, we're just going to drop a layer in there, and then that's where we can do like this if we needed it. So like a bridging detail that just like, it's going to be there. We need to do it. It's just not part of the symmetry package. That makes sense. I think that makes sense. So we'll do those kinds of details, and we'll leave those in these extra little pieces inside the group. By the way, that works perfectly. That swoop. Okay, so now we've got, and like I'm wondering if there's certain details where we just don't need to do the symmetry move. Like we can always just do this if we really need to. I think also we're gonna have to pull one of our lips. Okay, granted that was a terrible line, but it's not centered. Right? I'm not crazy. That's not centered. Okay, so I think we gotta bump you a little bit over. Oh, I didn't want that to happen. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I think that's right, because I obviously didn't design it in the center of the actual piece. It's just slightly off, just like we had to connect the two nose pieces, right? I still think it's really odd, and I like it because it's out of proportion. So I think we keep that like that. I think the eyes are too narrow and they're too small, and the nose is a little bit more bulbous and a little bit like straight lined. For a nose that size, it should be perhaps somewhat manipulated or even like bulbous, but we're going to kind of do it as if it wasn't a bulbous nose, if that makes sense. Okay, let's get some of this side detail dealt with here. Okay, so now we got to figure out like just where's this sort of weird cheekbone area going to kind of come from, as if the skull is like too small in one sense. And I'm kind of seeing this as if it doesn't have a skull, like that it's just forming this mound of flesh to resemble skeletal, but underneath it's not. Like, who knows? Yeah, I guess the question would be, if you have an idea of what kind of character this would it be a shapeshifter? What kind of thought process does this evoke? It's a great idea for us to examine together. We can start to give these characters a bit more of a real form. I kind of like that. Where I want to go swooping out to kind of make that nice jawline to start to work that area, I kind of just want to avoid it and just go straight. Right. And then like that. Yeah, I think we can connect these forms by like working with the ear. And just like sort of avoiding the natural jawline feel and almost trying to fuse the ear into the side as if, again, there's no grading. Like it's almost cylindrical. Think Master Control in the original Tron, but just with more detail, right? So it's like strange stretched, tube-like thing. All right, so now we kind of go, since we're still doing this, let's keep with it. Okay. Whoop. How's that look, guys? It feels weird. And I don't necessarily think it's comical weird either. I mean, obviously we're going to be able to create mood with shading and different levels, but you get my drift. Yeah, I think I kind of want to, like, you see this, I'm just going to circle it. See this piece right here? I almost feel like we want to work it into the ear. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes like another it's an awkward appendage that doesn't make sense. The lobe will still have a distinct lobe, but it'll just kind of awkwardly connect in a way that just doesn't make sense, denoting some sort of strange facial features. All right, so again, we're gonna do the group thing, and like I said, eventually we can just start, chunking all these bad boys together. But for now, we will do this. Okay, so I don't want to go upside down. And usually I would like do something like this and kind of gradually work into it, but I don't want to do that. I don't want that connection. I want it to be like it's tacked on almost. Like that kind of feel. And then instead of having a break, it just slides in like that. Right, where you would usually have some sort of like connection here to create that like lobe effect. I almost feel like it just should be this almost non-creased set. Put the hole in the exact same spot. And not have the usual break where you would have that detail work so that you delineate the pieces. Instead, let's not delineate the pieces. Right, and if we silhouette it right, so let's do our thing. Okay. Does that look right? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's as good as it's going to get in terms of like trying to create that symmetrical look. I think my wife just sneezed. I feel like I have to yell bless you, but that might not be the best time, especially if anybody's watching this afterwards on headphones. Okay. All right, so let's get our guidelines out of here and let's just sort of check our progress. Okay, so now we get rid of all of that kind of the extra noise, and we're sort of left with where we're going, which I have to be honest, I like it. I like it because I can see that, again, what we're trying to accomplish is being accomplished. There's something wrong here, and that's the feeling I think that you want to have if you're trying to make people like. Part of what I really enjoy about horror films, really good horror films, is when they drive to disarm you, and not in the prototypical way of like saying, okay, these characters or the situation is not threatening right away. right? So okay, so then we're not in trouble, and you get comfortable because you're like, oh, it's a horror movie, but we're not in trouble, so it can't be that bad. And then shmamam, you're watching a whole bunch of people's heads get cut off. In this case, we're talking about being disarmed even from a distance, like that. My back's up and I'm uncomfortable. Oh no, it's nothing. It's just something that I'm used to seeing. You know what I mean? And then as it gets closer to you and you get, I think it was something that they tried to do in It Follows. And I think it was close. They did good. But again, it was just the way in which it was executed. I think it kind of fell flat. But the initial, like, I see that silhouette, I see that character, I see that thing coming at me. Very, very, very disconcerting. Very disconcerting. I'm going to put back one of our guides real quickly because I think we need it just for the head shape itself. And I think we can, like, I still think we're going to still need to have the depth of the skull, right? So we're going to kind of pull from the back here. But I do think that we don't have to have, like, again, the prototypical form of a head. So you'll see what I mean in a second. I think we should just do it in a deliberate way that it doesn't make sense. Again, we're trying to do that, right? So no, that's bad. I don't like that line. Okay. So I want to do that because I think it works for both the weirdness of our piece as well as it just works to finish the actual head. Yeah, but we're not symmetrical unless we do that. Yeah, that's really weird. I think we're gonna have to pull. I think we're gonna have to pull a couple of the features a little bit inward. We may have to sort of narrow the mouth ever so slightly in terms of its width, and I think I don't know. Part of me feels like we do want to tighten it in so it does match this line here. I kind of think that works better, and we might want to just keep the mouth elongated. So maybe we just do that. Let's do that. Let's connect these bad boys. Okay. And then let's pull up. Where's our jawline? There's our jawline. Okay. And we should be able to mess with that whole thing. Okay, cool. Oh, it's both lines. Oh no. We may have to erase and just call it a day. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, I think we can work with that. Yeah, I think we can work with that. It's the top of his head is just weird. I love it. Okay, let's do. Let's try. Let's see if we have to narrow the mouth. If we have to narrow the mouth, we narrow the mouth. If we don't have to narrow the mouth, we won't. We probably should have duplicated that layer. Okay, so there you go. Examples. All right, let's try this. Okay, let's look at it. Let's look at it from a bit of a longer distance. So we've got that, right? Oh, that's a hard call. That's a hard call. I think I'm going to go with the smaller mouth. Yeah, I think the smaller mouth's the right answer. I really, really do. All right. Listen, I'm gonna take a second because washroom needed. And then we'll come back and we'll start to add detail to this and continue our discussion on over design versus restraint and see how we're doing and kind of touch base with each other and figure out if we're happy with where we're going. All right. I will be right back. I promise. So just hang in there. All right, we're back. Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for sticking around and having fun with some art. Okay, let's kill the background off and let's add some color and some detail here, at least in terms of a basic. So we're going to go here and we're going to take out the background. I could have done that 3 times now and I didn't do it. So there we go. And this just gives us a clear background to play with and it'll let us start to layer color as we need to. The other thing we'll do is I think we'll take out our guide now because I don't think we need them. All right. So underneath this layer, I think we're going to add our basic skin tone. Okay, so I started to play with the color palette when I was doing the thumbnail for this, and it was very intentional. So I'd like to kind of stick with that. And it's this sort of pale-ish, kind of greenish color. That sounds terrible, but it is what it is. It starts in this spectrum here. I started with this and then sort of built around that. So let's use this as our tone. And then we're going to freehand this bad boy. And yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, we should redo that line because it sucks. Remember, guys, you can pinch. So pinch when you can. We'll also be able to erase anything we don't like or change it out. That's not okay. There we go. The jagged line is really hard to see, especially when I'm pinching as deeply into the piece as I am, but it's there. Hopefully you guys can see it, but all I'm doing is outlining the piece underneath all of the layers. So all of the layers, the inking is all on top of this base layer that we're going to use as our color. And then we're going to start to layer in some shading or some basic shading so that we can get the intent there. And then we'll make decisions on whether or not we want to keep the outlines or not. So I was kind of thinking about that too. So yeah, so we go around the piece, and this sketch glove is amazing. I know a lot of artists have them who use conventional medium like sketch pads and conventional art because it keeps them from smudging and such. This thing's just great so that you don't like constantly makes marks on your digital canvas. Because trust me, I have gone through layers and found like little dots before I got this bad boy, and then when I got it I was just like, oh, I can't imagine not having it. Such a simple tool, but such a huge benefit. All right, there we go. Okay, remember we've got like a huge canvas. Okay, so there we go. We've got our head now nicely outlined. So we can keep with our symmetry game, and let's keep playing that game. So we're gonna add another layer here, and we'll go a shade deeper. So in this spectrum, we can go to this kind of greenish color. I just like it. It's just got a kind of sickliness to it that I like. And I, again, want to kind of play with distance when we get this all done. So we're going to keep playing with this freehand tool. I like it. It really allows me to kind of efficiently shade, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over all of the piece where we want shading anyway. On the right side, obviously, because we're going to stick to that kind of self-imposed created restriction. So we'll break that right there. And then there's a couple of things you kind of have to be aware of. One of the things is if you don't close it, it goes weird. So there we go. So that becomes like our base shade. And I mean, we'll play the game of just duplicating it just so that we can see it and line it up. But we're going to keep playing with it. Like, we're just going to add more detail to it as we go. And then we'll do the flip. And that looks like it works, right? So now we've got now we can start to really get some, depth on the piece. We're going to go backwards though and kill off the extra layer so we can keep just going with what we're doing and add more detail as we need to. So back to the freehand tool, right? And we know this is gonna all get eaten up in shade. We're just gonna use a deeper color when we get to that point. See what I mean? So we can do this, go away, do that. If you don't like that line, just kind of add that circle in there. I think we're gonna need more. Yeah, we're gonna need a lot more shadow. It's probably fair to say that we're gonna be, we're gonna probably want to go. This can get changed afterwards, but I think we're gonna definitely want to do this. And remember, we can add highlights too, and more shadow, which we will do. But we're going to kind of come right up underneath here, because all this is going to get eaten up in shadow. And then we can kind of play this game. And then go like that, which is going to be weird as is. There you go. And then we'll add more like the dark shade, the darker and the darker, and then we'll add some highlights in there. I think we're going to want to go this way too, probably. Just something in here that can give us that, right? And then we can kind of utilize that as our sort of shadow line. And then we'll kind of do this just so that we can create a bit more of a nose shape. I don't like that, because we still have to kind of try to gain symmetry. This might actually work in our favor. I won't lie. Okay. Okay, let's do the duplication now. And let's do the flip and let's align them. Because then if we have to add more, we can. Takes a second, right? You're gonna have to look at it. I think that's it. It lines up with the ear, but ironically enough, it's slightly off. That's okay. We can work with that. There we go. See, so now it's still really weird, right? Even just in that sense, now with the more sort of a little bit more depth of field, a little bit more structure to it, and it's just awkward. I think what we're going to also do is start to add the absence detail, and that's going to be this. So it's now a question of what do we want to do in terms of this sort of eye socket thing. I'm going to try this bluish color because I think it'll kind of look cool. We're going to do the same fill-in tool. I'm going to kind of try to keep slightly in this faded line, just so that that kind of accents it, if that makes sense. Like that. How does that look? I don't know. One, I think we need it to be black. Yeah. Okay, so that's a given. That's not bad though, eh? That's not bad at all. It's really weird. You see what I mean? That's just weird. I don't, yeah. I like the apps. I like that. I mean, we could try this. Let's try this. Let's just see a contrast on the other side. Like we can kind of, we could go like this, right? And then, well, that's not good. And then just sort of, I think that I think it makes the character look cross-eyed, which I think is exactly like the opposite of the effect that we're trying to attain. So let's just not do that, and let's fill in the blank, and let's make that not like that. Okay, so there you go. All right, so yeah, I think what we'll just end up doing here is this and sticking with our symmetry move and then sliding over here and then just getting that same feel that we're looking for. Nope, not yet. That looks about right. Yeah. All right, there we go. Yeah, I like the absence. I really do. I also like the fact that everything looks too clean. And that's, again, I think a good indication of something that's really uncomfortable, or, you know, that will make you feel uncomfortable. Now we're going to add a layer on top of this bad boy, and we'll go to our next shade. Okay, so we were over here, and this would be the next one in line. I don't mind using these presets this way, by the way. It just does make life a little bit easier. We're going with the darker areas now, so we're going to kind of tighten up our moves. But we're also going to keep in mind the fact that we're being a bit looser. So we don't want to be all like super tight. I also, like I said, I've been playing with color. That was weird. I've been playing with colors a lot, so having something that's got a little bit of a different color palette for this, I'm enjoying. You could, of course, switch this all out from more flesh tones or even more like of a sort of sicklier. Like we could have just stayed with this yellow, this particular shade here, and then just kind of gradually went darker. And we can still try that. Like we can look at this from this perspective. If this is our base, our next shade up would probably be something like that, right? So what we can do is we can go into this layer here, and then we can pull that in there like that. And then we can look at that as our progression if we really wanted to, right? And then that will help us kind of, again, build out this more sort of strange flesh tony feel to it, right? So we can go this route too, right? And it's not a difficult switch to make, right? Obviously. So you can do that, and that in and of itself, again, is really disquieting because it's just the tones just look manufactured. So even that kind of mannequin falsity is something you can play with if we're kind of looking at it from this perspective. And then we can go back to this layer, the one that we're starting to actively work on, and then we can pull deeper. So we can go a little darker and more into the sort of richer color if we wanted to. And then that can be our next layer of, you know, color. Or we can go even deeper. And I think we should probably go deeper. So go a little darker so that there is more of that separation of color. And then it starts to become more shadow-like. The other answer is, and I mean, there's, you know, another way you can sort of approach this shading concept is you can take black, right? And this is back to opacity use, right? But if we wanted to, we could go, I'm just going to do this as an example so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's say we want to go like this. Right, so that's our shadow. What we can do is we can come in, go to the opacity and bring it down. So this can be like one shadow, like this can be one layer of shadow, and then you can go in with a second layer. Right, add that extra layer in, go back to your tool, and then go bigger, right? And then you can again play with the opacity. right? And then the shadow underneath it starts to deepen, and then like you would have no necessity for this layer or this, like these extra layers. You could just start layering shade that way, because as you can see, you take that out, you're that. You take this out, you get that. It doesn't have the same depth, so you can add that depth. And it's pretty, mirrored to the one on the right? If you look at these two side by each, we're still attaining the same sort of thing. We can still structure that sort of overshadow with the opacity move in the same way we're doing on the right. We're just layering color versus taking a dark color and then just messing around with its opacity. So it's really just 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. It's whatever you feel better with. Recently, I've been playing with this way of shading, of doing these different layers of color. That's just been my jam recently. So that's why I'm doing it this way, if that makes sense. So we're back into our color layer. If ever you lose a color, at least with Procreate, you can just hold your stylus or your finger over anywhere on your piece, and then it'll pop around this little cool color wheel. Let go, and then you'll notice the color is up in the top right corner. So listen, I forget that I can pull. If you go to the disc, you can pull these colors into this button bar here and then kind of keep them. And you can also build palettes as you go. I just legitimately forget to do it. I'm just that way. All right, back to this. All right, we're gonna go. I think we should have pulled this a bit deeper, like that. Maybe we can round it out a bit, like that. Yeah, much better. And then I think we can pull this right down here. Sorry, I got all quiet, guys. You get those like moments where you have to like do the like steady line. But you see where we're going with this, right? So we're going to give it that extra layer of darkness, and that'll give us some depth. And the shadow helps to start to sort of bring out the layers. And back to our, that thesis of, far away, close. I mean, okay, so granted, I can see this a little bit better than you can, but if we start to pull him closer and closer, there's going to be a point where it just stops making sense. And I think that becomes pretty plain when you get a decent sort of closeness to it, that things just don't make sense. There's a mask-like quality to this particular piece that I kind of enjoy as well. Which is making it, again, really kind of uncomfortable and awkward, which, hey, that's what we're going for. All right, let's keep thundering through this. I think we're going to attach, because we did this on purpose, right? So I'm feeling like as I said, we are going to put hair on this character. Yeah, so we'll bring this right around and then kind of create this almost cylindrical jawline that naturally kind of perks up this way, which shouldn't be like that. Maybe we'll just give it a bobble here and then a bobble here, and then maybe we pull it like that, just so there's that sort of see what I mean? So there's just this sort of awkward jawline creation starting, which again, shouldn't make any sense because that's not how jaws work. I feel like the chin is still something we have to mess around with, but it'll probably be like a last add. We'll skip the highlight stage on this one and we'll just kind of pull this. Yeah, I like where this is going. Looking at our time, it's not likely we're going to finish this tonight, but I will be finishing this so that we can present it on our Sunday studio day, where we hang out and we work through what we've worked through this process and sort of refine all of the concepts and make it into a finished thing. So our creepy stalker, sort of uncanny face guy is going to be finished off on our Sunday show, where we kind of start to really hone this in. I'll be messing with this, of course, off stream. But if there are details that you want or things that you can see that this thing could benefit from, don't be afraid to, jump into the comments, make some suggestions, have some fun, join in the conversation, and allow me to start to kind of get some of your creative understanding so that I can kind of hone my energy into that area. It's always fun to do that. Other things that I'd like to talk about really quickly and briefly touch on is where we're going and how we're going to get there. So we're going to be creating a much more robust study of horror through the next year. So I'll be combining my streams into weekly focuses and then monthly essay topics. So that'll all culminate into a sort of video essay. And then at the end of the year, we're going to have all of it aggregated into a documentary style film-like creature that will hopefully have input from our community, input from all of our stream work together, the experiments we're running, and all of the sort of troubleshooting and the fun that we're having now. So that's where we're going, and this is just the start. So weekly, it's going to be Tuesdays. We're going to do our horror autopsy. Thursdays, as is today, is going to be the Vi11ain Lab, and on the Sunday we're going to have our studio day. This weekend we're doing PJs and paranoia, which means I'm going to be wearing PJs, and we're going to be trying to examine this piece and then just see if we can make it a little tweaked into the more, sporadic, erratic, but enjoyably held in that lovely restrained package. So what did we do today? We touched on our awesome topic that we started on Tuesday of discussing how villains are over-designed. And then we started to work on some sort of creature that is under-designed, that understated, restrained approach to horror that a lot of times seems to be abandoned in today's sort of horror narrative. We're going with symmetry heavy with our character, so it starts immediately to start make your mind a little bit awkward. We're positioning features and making features seem as if they're normal, but they're just slightly off. Areas like the eyes being slightly too small, being centered in a weird way and positioned, the eyebrows being too perfect, the ears not being exactly right, attached to the head slightly weird, the elongated face, and of course the mouth and the nose. So we're playing with these features, but we're not exaggerating them to such an extent that they're the big feature. Vis-a-vis the demonic or creepy grin. I'm guilty of it too. There you go. The creepy grin, right? There's there's your creepy grin. So we got to touch on how we don't have to lean into these types of methods to make things uncomfortable or disquieting, and that these sort of restrained approaches can start to bear a lot more fruit and perhaps can resonate deeper because they play on fears that are much, much, much more universal. And this is just a sort of neurological phenomenon. Your mind will attempt to make things make sense, especially when they're faced with something that just doesn't make any sense. And that's the feeling I'm trying to evoke and that we're trying to evoke today with this particular piece. So a couple of things that I look at right away that stand out to me beyond the features we've already talked about, and some things that I might want to examine. We've talked about this as well. The chin, I think, is too much. It's too rounded and it just makes it too bulbous. Part of me feels like the best answer is going to be that we do something along these lines and we just kind of crop it, right? So we maybe crop it here and then just sort of form it back into something that's a little bit more around this kind of pipeline here. And then just box it a bit more so that we still kind of have jawline, but that it's not that pronounced jawline that we want, which would be like kind of this. Okay, maybe that's a bit much, but something like that, you know what I mean? So I kind of feel like that's a change that I'll make while we're off stream. A little bit of cleanup, like, you know, that lack of connection, and maybe I like this guideline that's here. I just feel like it's starting to it's making the picture really hard to look at in the wrong way. So I think this becomes a detail line that we end up breaking up a little bit more so that it doesn't sort of break the face up as much as it is. I think it's losing that sort of cylindrical rollback. I think that also has to do with the ears and how they're positioned sort of pushed outward. However, I want the pushed outward ear because it looks unnatural. So again, I'm kind of like that. The other thing I'm trying to avoid is, like, you see how my face makes that? I want to avoid that. So stretching the mouth to almost the extent that it's here starts facilitating a bunch of weird things. If I had the ability, or if I had chosen to almost open the mouth slightly, I would make the teeth abnormally narrow in the mouth based on the opening. So I would want the opening to be wider, but I would want the teeth line to like narrow out so it made no sense. So even this would make no sense because there should be nothing there. So I really wanted that, as if whatever this thing is interpreting humanity not correctly. So like I said, like if this was me and I had the mouth slightly opened, like you would think that the teeth would be all the way to here because, you know, you'd kind of come up with that mouth like that. But instead, I would keep the teeth like here, even to the back molars being like this, so that this entire opening is exaggerated, and now it makes even less sense because now the teeth line are here. So you're getting this instead, right? As opposed to what you'd want to see, right? Because this would be the end of it right here. But the mouth would still be out to this point, right? So you'd have that like strange mouth structure. But it would look so weird, right? So I think those are some of the things that I'll look at and examine. Maybe I do open the mouth so that the teeth are exposed so that you can sort of see that with like not the menacing grin, but just the sort of, sometimes your mouth opens slightly so that we get that. But again, having that symmetrical opening so that there's that strange kind of separation, I think could be something we can definitely play with and look at. The color palette, I think I will admit I went the wrong route with it initially. I think this is a much better fit for what we're doing, and I like it much more. So from that standpoint, yeah, I'm all for it. That is not what I intended to do. Yeah, I think this is the right route. So Sunday, bringing this back to the table with more work into it. Gonna kind of go through what we've discussed, look at some other pieces that I'm working on, especially one like I do have a Pennywise piece that I could use some help with. So kind of the conundrum of going too cartoonish and trying not to lean into the over exaggeration, but that sometimes you can't help it. And then again, back to this sensibility of this discussion of, restraint and understatement. And I think what we'll do as well is we'll bring some examples to the table of understated horror, but also that kind of drifts into that absence of features and that feeling like there's something missing and it doesn't make sense. And that in and of itself starts to disarm you. And that disarming starts to open you up to the potential of being really messed with. And again, not just in that like, oh, I saw this movie and it was really cool, in that I can never watch this movie again, or I can't wait to keep watching this movie because what it did to me was just so absolutely horrible and I loved it. At least that's what I gun for when I watch certain horror movies. And I kind of have an expectation that every time I watch a horror movie, I can at least walk away with having some level of fear. If not, I feel like I kind of didn't get what I wanted. I wanted to touch on one other thing, and something that I'm really hoping to continue to do. When conceptualizing this week, this idea of the dual approach to horror, I really wanted to represent in the thumbnail. And some of what we've kind of touched on and played with today are sort of aligning with this pretty closely. So please be aware that I'm likely going to make our mannequin resemble the area of the thumbnail that was for our restrained approach. And the first half of it, of course, was our over-exaggerated form, where I really, really leaned into this sort of Frankenstein-y, gory, brain-exposed skull kind of thing. I still did the understated detail approach that I've been really enjoying as an artist right now. I've been really loving just giving micro details. But as you can tell, I didn't go detail heavy. I really allowed the color and the sort of obvious goriness play more so than anything else. The other side was my restrained approach, and I really wanted to kind of look at menacing through, again, those micro details, those tight, deep, dark shades with, again, some absence. Yeah, sure, we've got a pupil here. And yeah, it's realized, but it's still that absence. And that absence, I think, makes this much more menacing and it resonates ever. Plus, I did something I usually don't do. I've never really done the whole, take a picture of my face or a face and then use it as a guideline and then start to play with it and pull it and push it. So it was a kind of fun exercise for me in that sense. And it's something I advocate very heavily for all artists to do. Consistently try to push yourself out of your own comfort zone and take on challenges where you can. Each week when we take on these thesis statements on examining horror, I also want to push myself as an artist. So I want to take on these kinds of challenges where I'm, doing a new form of art, or I'm utilizing the question that we're trying to answer, or just kind of work out. I can sort of manifest that into something that's concrete, like a piece of art. So very, very proud of this work, as I am proud of what we've done together so far. Again, for all those people who have hung out tonight, I can't thank you enough. It's a pleasure to hang out with you folks and to work out these ideas. As we grow, I imagine so too will all of our connectivity, and I look forward to it. Past that, if you ever have any questions, comments, or suggestions, obviously do all of the usual YouTube things and the Twitch things, comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And if there are things that you want us to do more of, reach out. I'm obviously a pretty open guy, so Let me know what you want to see and we'll do it. Past that, thank you so much for coming. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. I will see you on Sunday for our PJs and Paranoia studio day where, like I said, we're going to do some art. We're going to do some chatting. We're going to talk about what we've already talked about and more. It's going to be so awesome. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you guys next time. So peace out.